I'm David Hill. I've been a member of this church since 1994 and active for much of the time. In 1995, Charlotte and I and our two oldest grandchildren went on a mission trip to Slovakia. And it was rewarding in many respects, but I found that I was, later I found that I was not ready for to receive God's blessing on a mission trip for that year. In '96, we went back again to a town about 14 miles from the border with Ukraine. The name of the town was Michalovce. A church in Oklahoma had bought a small house to be renovated for a church for this small house congregation that had been worshiping for 20 some odd years. We were the last of 4 teams that went one after the other mostly from Oklahoma to come and renovate this place. So when we got there as the last team, a lot of things had happened in the meantime. The hotel where we stayed was across the town center from this building that would be a church. And so every morning we would march through downtown. There are 40,000 people in this town. The few cars, and so most of the commute was foot traffic through the town center. So we would go through the town, clean, work all day, go back in the evenings, get cleaned up, and come back through town again for supper. So we had a visual impact, regardless of what we may think here. Americans have a different look about them, and from early on, people knew that there were Americans in their town just a few years after the fall of the Soviet Union. So here I am, one of the last teams. I'm standing in front of the building and chipping some plaster off to be replastered. The pastor is out standing next to me and chatting, and this man comes walking up the sidewalk very briskly and walks up to the pastor and starts pecking him on the chest with his finger and talking very loudly, not shouting, but very loudly, in Slovak, which I didn't understand. And after a moment, the pastor led this man off to have a chat with him. So he came out a little bit later. The man shook the pastor's hand and walked off. So I asked him, what was that all about? Well, this man had come up and said, I want to know what building this is and why our Americans are over here working on it. So his response was to say, well, come, let me tell you about it. The guy's now a member of the church. So this was a very moving experience for me, and that was just one of the spiritual milestones. We had a sharing one evening, and the pastor said, we were so appreciative of you coming to Slovakia to help us fix up this building so we can have a proper church. He said, but across the street are these Soviet bloc apartments, about 800 to 1,000 apartments full of kids. And after the Iron Curtain fell, they stopped teaching Russian and started teaching English. And so on about the second or third day of the first team, the kids coming home from school realized there were people speaking English across the street. And they came over to practice. Well, by the time we were there, after school was out, there were more children than there were adult Slovaks and Americans there working on the building. And it was quite a chore to accomplish anything other than mess around with the kids. So the pastor says, we were glad that you came to build this church, but we didn't realize that our purpose was to be here to serve these children. So that was a very powerful moment for me. I didn't go there with that in mind. My purpose was to go there and chip paint and clean up a building so these people would have a proper church. So God has a plan. And that plan for that day included me and a bunch of other wonderful people. And the third thing, something for us to remember that we have a remembrance of in the Hallelujah Center hanging over the fireplace is a saying that says, cast your anxiety on him. It's a passage from Peter. And this woman from that congregation painted that for us to bring back. So it's labeled in there. There's a brass plaque in there that dates that. So that was quite a thing. We found out later that the church, after we left, they were happy to be in the building, and they were all excited, and one of them said, wait a minute, we had to teach them how to do everything. They were not familiar with our tools, the materials that we had, and so, they were pretty much unskilled labor. Says, we could do all of that, so let's expand on our church, which they have done, and now their building is at least 3 times the size of that original building that they did themselves. We did in early 2000s a music mission trip to Slovakia, and one of the stops that we made while we were there was to Michalovce, and we were not intending to be a part of the church, but I recognized some of the members of the congregation, and after our performance in the town center went down, and it was quite a reunion. So.